You hear that? It's completely silent. Usually when we open doors to an MPV like this, you hear the burble of a diesel or maybe the thrum of a petrol engine. But silence, that's usually restricted for the Kia EV9 or even a Toyota Vellfire on battery mode. But even that is a rare party trick, because you see, Toyota, bless them, believes that going all electric is just a phase. So as far as I can tell, an all-electric Vellfire, that's not happening anytime soon. And even if it does, you would have to spend over a crore and a high cross to be able to get one. But what if you could get that same lounge on wheels experience minus the Toyota tax and go electric anyway? That's the very idea behind this car. Ladies and gentlemen, this is the new MG M9.
Or like our neighbors like to call it, the Maxus MIFA 9. It's massive, it's opulent, and it costs about half as much as the EV9, while trying its best to cosplay as a Vellfire. MG promises it will spoil you silly in the second row. The question really is, does it actually feel like a 70 to 80 lakh rupee luxury car? Or is it just a well-dressed people carrier from the commercial fleet gene pool? Let's find out.
Someone from the product team went on a shopping spree and said yes to everything. Massage seats, tick. A separate sunroof for the front and a bigger sunroof for the rear that seems to create this metaphorical divide between the chauffeur and the plush end of the cabin. Someone said, why not? Tick. More number of screens than an average household. Tick. More ambient lighting options than an average nightclub in Goa. Also tick.
And some of those features are actually quite useful, like those big lounge chairs that recline, massage, and move in more ways than you would have thought.
What the seats can do is actually a conversation starter in itself. Like for example, they don't just move forward and back, they also move sideways to begin with, and then they nicely stretch out. So when you want to just get a snooze, maybe look at the cloud, it's going to nicely let you relax. You have the screens at your disposal, and there's also the massage function that I was talking about, which feels more than just a poke at your spinal cord. It's actually quite comforting, especially on those long journeys, those long bumper-to-bumper traffic jams. I also absolutely love the kind of airy feel that you get inside this cabin. The big glass pane obviously helps, and then even the windows. These are some of the largest windows that I've ever experienced from the second row of a car. Too bad that the window blinds are manually adjustable and not electrically adjustable when the rest of the stuff actually is. But hey, if I had to go nitpicking, it's not just this. You know, all these materials, nice and soft touch, there's a nice mix of materials, it all feels good. But some of the plastics, in the not so common areas, they aren't what they promise to be. Also, those exposed mounts for your seatbelt, it looks like public transport in my opinion. In fact, some of the plastics are already falling apart. If you put kids in the third row, they're probably going to poke a hole through the speaker housing. And out here, I was hoping for a tray to come out, but what's coming out right now are tissue papers.
Worry not though, the table is available as an accessory, and those falling plastics are probably because these are pre-production prototypes.
What you're seeing in the rear view mirror is actually the feed from the camera. But usually on luxury cars, the cameras are on top, a part of the shark fin antenna. Here, however, the camera has been placed on the tailgate itself, which means that the spray from rainwater, like the rest of the car, is going to dirty the camera as well. But that's not a big deal, because a little toggle switch on the rear view mirror is going to let you quickly toggle between the display versus a standard conventional camera. So when you want the privacy, you can go on to the camera mode so that your chauffeur can't see who is in the back seat or what's happening in the back seat. And whenever you want to override any of the problems with the camera, you can simply toggle. Now the camera, like I said, sits on the tailgate. This is a powered tailgate and a massive, massive tailgate at that. I also like the fact that the loading lip is quite low, which means getting luggage in and out is absolutely no problem. It's not too cumbersome. And if you have a pet, you want to carry them in the boot, they can quickly jump in. So that's another advantage. You'll also see that the third row is right now folded, and the third row is movable as well. So you can maximize space when you're running a full house. When you're not, you can just drop the seats and then get even better space. And because you get this much taller arrangement, you can arrange your luggage. Now, of course, there is no right answer to this. There are pros and cons to this. Now, if you have something heavier, the bigger bags obviously need to go here, but that also means that you have to lift them all the way up there. And that can become quite cumbersome. I don't know what's in this bag, but you get the drift. If it was a completely flat floor, it would have been much better, but that would have also compromised on the third row, room, leg space, and foot position. The metaphorical divide that I talked about, the chauffeur versus the plush end of the car, gets even more highlighted the moment you enter the front row. Like all the materials that fall easily at hand are soft touch, but the moment you go a little lower, it's all lower-end plastics. I don't quite like it.
There are stitch paddles, and the controls are surprisingly intuitive once you stop poking the wrong touch-sensitive bits. There is no start button though. The car is ready to drive the moment you enter. And when you put it in park and open the driver's door, it switches off. What could be the pros and cons of a setup like this? Let us know in the comments below.
Even the infotainment, now the bezels, the design, all of this is very similar to what we've seen on some of the German cars. In fact, even the speaker housing in the front is very much Burmese stuff. But you know, when luxury cars do this, they also design a really good-looking dashboard. It feels a lot more sensual. It feels quite nice. It invites you in. Here with these very simple AC vents, very simple materials, it just doesn't add up. Otherwise, the fit feels fine. The voice commands don't really work all that well, but the software is nice and slick. The touchscreen doesn't feel laggy, which is a very big deal. The instrumentation is also very small. They've gone with a very minimalist design theme here, but it's not classy minimalism. It feels more like they skimped out on a few things because they spent all of the money on the second row.
After all, this car is aimed at an owner who will never get into the driver's seat. And there is nothing wrong about it, considering that the M9 is a luxurious people carrier and one that offers a far more opulent experience in the second row than the Kia Carnival even. And that is a big deal. So here's my pro tip. When you go for a test drive, do take your chauffeur along.
This vehicle needs no introduction. It's India's national people carrier. Another Toyota. Of course, these are not competitors, but it's a good vehicle for me to give you a perspective on just how big the M9 is. The M9 is as long as an Innova, plus me. Take a look. Where the Innova ends is where the wheelbase of the M9 ends. In fact, the wheelbase of the M9 is longer than the E-Class LWB. And that has its clear advantages on just how much room you get inside the cabin, not just for the first and the second rows, but also for the all-important, sparingly used third row.
As we showed you, the second row seats can slide laterally to make space for the third row passengers to walk in. And the third row seats get a similar tan upholstery to maintain the look and feel.
If I had to go wishing for things, I would have loved to have a center armrest even in the third row. But honestly, the third row is not bad at all. In fact, it's better space than some of the hatchbacks that we've grown up from. The knee room is excellent. Even with the second row seat set slightly backward, the knee room is quite excellent. Foot space is a bit of a compromise because you have the ISOFIX tether for the child seat in the second row to be tethered onto, which is why you don't get that kind of foot space. So you do sit in a bit of a knees up position, but honestly, it's not uncomfortable at all. The headroom is also quite good. The view outside of the window, even for the third row, is also quite nice. You get your own AC vents. You also get your own reading lamp, which is really good news. And then there are a few cubby holes here to keep your phone or other plastic bits that may have fallen off. But yeah, the overall space back here is actually quite good. This is, in fact, one of the best third rows that I've ever been in.
Despite the size, the M9 uses a single AC compressor. And at least in the humid weather of Goa during our test, it seemed to work well with the occasional condensation at the vents. None of the 5 passengers that we carried complained. The M9 comes to India via the CKD or completely knocked down route in 3 colors, and there is only one full fat trim with all the features you see here. MG has worked hard to make the M9 feel like it belongs to that 70 to 80 lakh rupee conversation. And while most of that money is for the second row, the electric powertrain is an absolute gem too and has its advantages at the front and in the second row as well. We'll come to that in a bit. The M9 is unapologetically big. At 5.2 meters long, with the road presence of a modest school bus, it turns heads and then occupies every available square inch of their rearview mirror. It's longer and wider than not just the Toyota Vellfire, but also the new Kia Carnival. Sure, it's not as tall as the Toyota, but you won't complain. Your chauffeur gets that commanding view of the road like an SUV. But despite the boxy design, it does have a few blind spots.
The airy feel of the cabin is something that you will absolutely love, and even if you are the one driving the car, you will appreciate that because it gives you great visibility. Getting a judgment of all the four corners of the car, however, can get a bit tricky because it is, after all, a really big vehicle. So tight parking spaces, really narrow lanes, some of the narrow roads here in Goa, that can get a little wary. That can get a little nerve-wracking because this is, after all, a really big vehicle. For a car this big, the ADAS functions also come in handy, especially the lane departure warning and the lane keep assist. Because yesterday we were being driven around by some of the existing chauffeurs from Goa, and while they have experience on their side, I often found them meandering out of their lanes every now and then. And that's given the sheer width of this car. Probably they've never driven something as big. That is where all these ADAS functions definitely do help. You also get the blind spot assist, and that is also something that you need because while the A-pillar may not be too thick, everything that's going on over here with the quarter glass, that camera, those big mirrors, you want that assistance as well. I also mentioned the camera, and that is another bit of safety kit. It's going to constantly monitor the driver's eyes. If the driver is falling sleepy, or the driver is busy on the phone, or if the driver is simply distracted, it's going to note all of that, register all of that, and quickly warn you. So it's a step ahead of the standard fatigue warnings that you get in many of the luxury cars. This will detect fatigue, this will detect distraction, and ask you to keep your eyes on the road. But speaking of that, what does make you take your eyes off the road is the instrumentation. If you need a quick glance at the speed, at the battery levels, you need to look down. You have to take your eyes off the road, look down at the instrumentation. And with the ADAS and with so many sensors, there's always some warning. There's always something trying to grab your attention. And the fonts are small. The layout is not the most intuitive. And then having to take your eyes off the road to quickly figure out what's happening, what's making that sound. That is distracting. They've also gone with a Mercedes-Benz style gear selector on the stock. And if your chauffeur is not too used to this, or if your chauffeur has been changing cars often in your garage, then this can get a bit unnerving because sometimes you just want to use the turn blinker and you end up pushing it down, and that engages the adaptive cruise control. And then, it's starting to slow down on its own, it's starting to accelerate on its own depending on the speed that you've set and depending on the position of the vehicle in front of you. We already know how adaptive cruise control works. But because the visual warnings are not loud and clear over there, and because the instrumentation is so small, sometimes it may not register that you've accidentally engaged the adaptive cruise control. And when that happens, the car seems to behave in an erratic manner because you're least expecting it to. Which is why I say that with the M9, you need a well-trained chauffeur to do the job. Now, taking U-turns, not that big a deal because this is a skateboard architecture and it has a really good turning radius as well. So I'm not too worried over there. But yeah, sometimes you do have to make these 3-point turns, and that is where things can get a little unnerving. You do get parking sensors, you do get camera aids and whatnot. All of that is on the screen, but the cameras, not high resolution. The brightness levels are not that great. And well, they are not the best aid, let me put it that way. They can be a little bit tricky at times. Add to it a steering feel that gives hardly any feedback, and you don't really know what the front wheels are doing. Simply put, there is a bit of a learning curve involved with this vehicle. Apart from that, as a powertrain, excellent powertrain, torque is never going to be a problem. It's never going to be out of breath. So uphill climbs, flyovers, none of that is ever going to be a worry for this car. You do get different driving modes as well, so if you need that additional punch, you can again dial that up too. Now, braking can often get unnerving with big vehicles like these, but it's not that big a worry. With the assistance of the regenerative braking, it feels nice and confident. Even from triple-digit speeds, when you have to come to a complete halt, it's not that big a problem. And in the city, the regenerative braking works really well. So if you have to resort to single-pedal driving, you can do most of it quite nicely. For a car this big, a 90 kilowatt-hour battery pack sounds humble. They could have gone over 100. They could have given you over 600 kilometers of range. The claim right now is going to be somewhere around the 400 kilometer mark if we go with the WLTP claims. They don't have one for the Indian driving cycle yet. But even if you get between 350 to 400 kilometers of real-world range, I think it's pretty decent. The car is comfortable, it's got the long legs, so you will want to probably take it road tripping often or be driven in it often to long distances. And even if that happens, with all the fast charging capability that it has, you should get by without a problem. However, if you're purely looking for an EV to be driven around in the city environment, and you don't necessarily need 3 rows of seating, and you don't necessarily need to make a statement about the size of the vehicle that you're driving, even something like the BMW iX1 LWB might just do the job for you. It offers excellent second row comfort, clearly not as comfortable or as limousine-like as this car. But if you don't need all of that and you want to flaunt a badge, I believe that the iX1 is going to steal a lot of customers from the MG M9. Compared to a typical body-on-frame MPV like the Innova, the ride quality is definitely better. You see, with the Innova, when you're traveling with a light load, not traveling with a full house, you get a lot of that bouncy feeling, that bouncy sensation. The ride just feels all over the place. Here, because of the weight of the batteries, there's already enough weight in the car to give you a composed drive. Even if you are driving alone, or even if it's just your chauffeur and you, the ride feels quite composed. However, the moment you get onto, say, concrete road from tarmac road, there's a marked difference between the two. Especially the third row, you're literally sitting on the overhangs, you're sitting behind the rear wheel. So there you can feel a lot of the jitters, you can feel a lot of the imperfections from the road. Even in the front, you do feel a bit of those vibrations. In the second row, however, it's not that bad. You're well cushioned, the seats are really good, and with all the weight of the batteries below you, you are in the sweet spot. Let's put it that way. So that's the better place to be in. So with the kind of comfort that it offers and with the kind of range that it is at least promising on paper, I think even for long distances, it's not a bad deal. Whether you're driving in the metros, whether you're driving in smaller towns, whether you're driving through the villages, the M9, thanks to its size and its imposing stance and all the styling elements that it has, it definitely does attract attention. The green number plate definitely highlights that you are making a green statement as well. And to maintain a clear distinction between the M9 versus whatever else MG sells, they have now come up with this range of more premium dealerships called MG Select. That is where you will get the more premium cars like the Cyberster, the M9, and whatever bigger, more expensive vehicles they will launch in the future. And it promises to give its customers a more premium, a more luxury-oriented experience. And I think that's a good move, because for someone who is willing to spend this kind of money on the MG badge, you want to have a different experience. You want to be treated a little differently. You want to feel good about the purchase more than what the car can offer you. That is exactly where these value-added services come into the picture. How that pans out, does it really work for MG, is something that only time will tell. And pulling back into the hotel, I can't help but think that most of the sales for the M9 are going to be institutional. It's places like these that would prefer a vehicle like this. It makes the green statement, it gives you the space, it gives you the comfort, and being an MG, it also promises lower running costs, lower maintenance costs compared to the luxury brands. So for them, it definitely fits. As for the vehicle, I think it does hit the sweet spot quite well. Yes, there are a few things that could have been done better, but overall, it does quite a good job. Let's just see how the market accepts the pricing now. And on that note, it's time to sum it up. With the M9 and the new line of select premium dealerships, MG is clearly testing new waters. Now, the stablemate for this car is the MG Cyberster, a beautiful looking car, which means is going to have easier pickings thanks to its body style. But the path for the M9 is going to be a rather difficult one. Because you see, on one end, you have the luxury brands. These are marks that can easily lure people away from the MG brand. And on the other end, you have the Toyota Vellfire, the definition of luxury MPVs in India right now. We've always seen, no matter where Toyota prices its products, luring people away from them is a very difficult affair. But the opportunity here is the void between the Carnival and the Vellfire. And that is exactly what the M9 aims to fill in. It's a value for money offering. It does have its shortcomings, but India is a value conscious market. So for someone looking to step up from the Carnival but not stretch all the way to a Vellfire, might just find the right answer in the M9. And if that happens, this could be the next big thing for MG, quite literally.